In this final lecture of part one, we're going to take a closer look at atherosclerosis, and we'll examine how endothelial dysfunction contributes to the development of plaque, which is the key step here in atherosclerosis. Now, in this situation, there are a number of effects that take place with the development of plaque. One such effect is that the bioavailability of nitric oxide will decrease. That will also be paired with the production of what are called contracting factors. These are molecules that are produced by endothelial cells that actually have the opposite effect of nitric oxide. Recall in our previous lecture, nitric oxide functions to relax smooth muscle, thereby allowing vasodilation to take place. However, these cells will also produce molecules that will generate the opposite effect and trigger smooth muscle contraction, causing vasoconstriction. The cells can also produce what are called pro-inflammatory and coagulation factors. And these are molecules that will tend to cause an increase in blood clotting and further increase inflammatory markers throughout the entire cardiovascular system, since we're talking about the endothelium that is affected. Now, recall that under healthy conditions, and so these are conditions in which atherosclerosis is not present, our previous lecture examined how the endothelial cells respond to the natural flow of blood shear stress and will produce nitric oxide to ensure that blood vessels stay vasodilated, particularly on the arterial side. Now, we go back to atherosclerosis here. By definition, it's the formation of plaque on the inner lining of blood vessel walls. And once again, here we're talking about arteries, not arterioles, and we don't typically see this on the venous side. And on the bottom part of the slide here we see a cross-sectional image of a healthy artery. This is the interior, or what's called the lumen of the artery. We see a nice wide artery that presents little resistance to blood flow. Now, if we jump over to the right-hand side, here we see a different artery that is atherosclerotic. And so we see a very large accumulation of plaque, and this takes a long time to develop. And the immediate effect this has is that it reduces the effective cross-sectional area. And so with a reduction in the effective cross-sectional area of the artery, it's much more difficult for blood to move through this vessel. Another aspect to this is that the material that makes up plaque is very brittle. And being brittle is that it has the potential for cracking, breaking off, and flowing with blood and wedging into smaller blood vessels, potentially creating an obstruction. So what plaque is made from? It's made primarily from cholesterol crystals, and we'll take a look at that here in this lecture. And it also has the effect of aggregating platelets. And platelets are cell fragments throughout the cardiovascular system that plays an important role in blood clotting. So the process that takes place in the formation of this plaque, it begins with LDL invasion into the tunica intima or interna. Those two terms are used interchangeably. And this is the inner lining of the blood vessel in question here. LDL, recall from earlier units, LDL is a low density lipoprotein and is the one lipoprotein that has the richest source of cholesterol. And this globular lipoprotein that circulates through the cardiovascular system functions to transport triglycerides, fat-soluble vitamins, and cholesterol through the body. Now, in instances where a person's tissues have a greater than normal amount of what are called free radicals, and these are small molecules that are highly reactive, do not carry a physiological function, but will react with many molecules in the body and adversely affect function. And so when these small molecules called free radicals attach to LDL, LDL becomes much more of a health concern for the vasculature. And what happens here is that the LDL globule, if it's attached with a free radical, will have the effect of attracting white blood cells, specifically macrophages, and these will form what are called foam cells. And these will attach and burrow underneath the endothelium, and that will have the effect of causing inflammation. And that sustains the cycle of more inflammation activating and attracting more macrophages. And this will cause the deposition of cholesterol. And we'll take a look at this process graphically on the next slide here. And so what we see here, we begin with what's called modified LDL. These are normal low-density lipoproteins that have been attacked by free radicals. And so this becomes a highly reactive lipoprotein that burrows underneath these endothelial cells. Now, being attacked or having these free radicals attached to the lipoprotein, the body will respond to this new lipoprotein with the free radicals as a foreign pathogen. And as a result, these new lipoproteins will secrete what are called chemoattractants, small molecules that will cause monocytes to migrate to the endothelium and burrow underneath and develop into what are called macrophages. And so a macrophage is a mature monocyte. Now the macrophage has the ability to absorb these modified LDL molecules, thereby neutralizing these globules as a foreign pathogen. The problem is that these LDL globules, once inside the macrophage, will break apart and release the stored cholesterol, and that's what's illustrated here in the yellow, and transform the macrophage into a foam cell. And the foam cell will then come back and bind to the endothelial cells and release these cholesterol deposits as cholesterol crystals. And that is how plaque is formed on the inner layer of the endothelial cell. Now, an interesting study here, this was a study published in 2007, and in this study, researchers took a number of mice in different groups, and these mice were put on a 16-week diet, and they were composed, and these were different diets among the different groups. So one group of mice were provided a regular diet that are fed to mice. Another group had the diet that was supplemented with 10% flax. And flax is a dietary food that is particularly high in the plant-based omega-3 fatty acids. Another group had their diet supplemented with cholesterol, and a fourth group had their diet supplemented with cholesterol and flax. They had another group that had their diet supplemented with coconut oil, but they did not report the results of that particular group. What the study found overall, that the mice that consumed a diet that included flax seeds, or particularly ground up flax seeds, that had an anti-atherogenic effect. An anti-atherogenic effect is one that is a situation where the production of plaque is reduced. That's particularly notable because these were mice that were genetically bred to not having LDL receptors. And so if these mice do not have LDL receptors, which is the normal process in which liver cells maintain LDL homeostasis, LDL levels remain elevated and are susceptible for being attacked by free radicals and will burrow under the endothelium. And the images here illustrate images of arteries that were harvested from the mice in the different groups. So in the top left-hand corner in image A, we see a healthy artery. We don't see much in the way of plaque deposition. And these were the mice on the regular diet. Supplement the regular diet with flax, and we see once again here we did not have the mice did not have an original problem with plaque deposition, and the flax caused no change. However, if we take a look at the mice that had their diet supplemented with cholesterol, over a very short period of time, we see these very significant deposits of plaque within the interior of these vessels. Now, the mice that had the diet supplemented with both cholesterol and flax did have plaque deposition. Remember, these were mice that were genetically bred not to be able to handle LDL levels. And so although in this case, in D, there was plaque deposition, it was found to be less than the C group here, because not only did this group have cholesterol, but they also had flax seeds, indicating that a diet that's high in cholesterol, but also high in flax seeds, which provides the omega-3 fatty acid found in plant-based foods, does provide a degree of protection against plaque formation. Doesn't completely eliminate it, but it does reduce it. So this ends our final lecture on part 1.